Well, ladies, it is such a pleasure to be here with you today. I'd love to begin with just a brief roundtable of this panel to share. I'm going to have you share a couple of sentences. Please try to keep it to 1 minute max about your background and expertise that is relevant to our topic today, parenting during the pandemic. And then we're going to ask a few core questions, but I'd love to also know, are any of you parents? Do you work with parents? What is one thing that you've noticed that has defined the parenting experience during the last year? So we're going to start with Anna, and I'm going to ask everyone to please introduce yourself so we can make sure that I'm saying your names correctly as well.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you. My name is Anna Teider. I'm currently in Seattle. It's very early in the morning. I am a mother of a 6-year-old boy who homeschooled for quite a while during the pandemic. And while homeschooling Kai, I launched my first podcast. I am by profession a book author and a journalist. And before the pandemic, I had the idea of creating a podcast in which I interview women from all around the world, different generations, different professions, different backgrounds, about the most important lessons they learned from their mothers. And then the pandemic struck. And in the middle of homeschooling Kai, I discussed with my friends for a while if it's a good time to launch a podcast like that or not. And I did. And I'm so happy I did, because it did turn into a beautiful platform for women around the world, especially during a lockdown, to connect and have a little virtual trip around the world every week and learn from other women's mothers. Thank you.
Dr. Rachelle Whitaker, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rachel. I am Dr. Rachelle Whitaker. I am an educational psychologist, a maternal mental health expert, and a parenting coach. I specialize in working with parents of children with disabilities. I am a mom of 2 boys who decided to make the choice to homeschool during this pandemic and juggle work and everything else. And so I would say the thing that parents have struggled with the most is fatigue, the many roles that moms have had to carry during this pandemic. I'm also the host of a podcast called Mahogany Moms, and the purpose of the podcast is to normalize the challenges that moms face, specifically moms of color. Happy to be here.
Dior, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Hi, I'm Dior, and I am the founder of Promoted to Mom, which is a digital platform that mainly focuses on first-time parents and helping them navigate working as well as motherhood, which is a perfect topic, I think, for today. And as part of that, I think one of the things the pandemic really highlighted for me was just how lonely sometimes the motherhood journey can be. And I think particularly when you look at things being closed, and I'm based in Toronto, and there's been just very little open, and you're basically, I want to say stuck at home. I do want to be a bit more positive, but that is what it is. You're basically stuck at home with, one or multiple children and very little support at times. So I think it just requires you to kind of put on your mask first, and this whole idea of taking care of yourself first before taking care of others has become really obvious. So I think that's one of the biggest learning lessons from the pandemic, and I'm excited to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dior. Simine.
Hi, everybody. My name is Simine Hussein. I'm so pleased to be here, and a big shout out to Anu for having me. We went to Georgetown together, and we've been friends ever since. I moved to London. I studied law. I specialize in criminal litigation, international law, and I'm also a children's book author. But I currently find myself in sort of cloudy Miami. And I am mom to 2 little girls. So this pandemic has been quite challenging, to say the least. And I love the topic of empathy, which I received in the email. And I was thinking about this concept of empathy, and I sort of, I felt, for me, in a subjective point of view, I would love to discuss the empathy we should have for our children, and then, of course, ourselves, both for our spiritual, mental, physical well-being. So I look forward to discussing that with you, ladies. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sameen. Bree, please introduce yourself. Let us know where you're coming in from and what you're finding fascinating about the pandemic and parenting.
Good morning, ladies. My name is Bree Nichelle, and I am a mother of 2 teenage boys, ages almost 14 and almost 20. I have a 20-year-old man. And it has been challenging to be a parent right now, because this is a lot of time we're spending together with teenagers who are used to being outside. So for me as a mom, as a podcaster, I'm also a social media strategist in the aerospace industry. It is a lot of hours that I didn't realize could be used with my family because I was so used to commuting or networking and attending conferences. So this has been a connection, and my word for my family is connection, because we've gotten a chance to reconnect. And these are days that I'm so grateful to have, because otherwise we wouldn't have had them.
Roxanne, please offer us your perspective as well.
So I'm Roxanne Durhodge. I'm in Niagara Falls, Canada, DR, so we're not too far apart. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, but have moved here way back to go to university. So my background is I've been in psychotherapy since I was 21, and kind of did every kind of element in reference to helping others. Recently, I wrote a book on relationships, which allows others to kind of work through authentic relationships. And I'm a podcaster. I do a mental health and wellness podcast, along with just releasing a new book on authentic leadership. So my perspective on parenting is that I do work with a lot of families, as one of my specialties is family therapy. And the elements that parents they're struggling, they're doing their best, but what's happening is that oftentimes the self-care element of things that is just being left, and couples are also struggling because they're not having that ability to connect as much. So it's really taking a lot of work. And I also have a 19-year-old who is stuck in the house and, not doing the normal developmental things that need to be done or should be being done at this time. So it's, have a bit of both on both ends. So thanks for having me, Anu.
Thank you all for being here. So just in this brief introduction, several core issues have come up. We've heard loneliness, fatigue, empathy, connection. These have been addressed in new ways during this time. And so I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you found connection shifting and perhaps improving during the pandemic? What are some of the new tools that you all have offered the mothers you serve to address some of these challenging times? What would you suggest to a mother? What are the sort of the top 3 things that we could help to offer each other as mothers and as women?
Maybe chime.
Go ahead.
And then you can go ahead after me, Bree. Thank you. I was gonna kind of piggyback on what Roxanne said, and I think one of the key thing is to, one, of course, take care of yourself. And I think we say that, but it's probably harder to put into action than what it sounds like. But I think the second piece is around seeking help. And I think sometimes that might look like, therapy, which works really well, and can kind of help you talk to somebody who's more neutral and has all the skills to be able to walk you through that. And I think the second piece, beyond just seeking help, whether it's professional help or family help or finding, a mom friend that you can really talk to, that doesn't judge or doesn't place any kind of judgment or opinion. But the second piece is around finding a community that you can relate to. I think that has been really important. And for us in particular, for Promoted to Mom, I think one of the key things that we're encouraging is, let's put a membership together with key principle around, not judging each other, around giving grace, around taking care of each other. And I think that even in this world where things are closed, as I mentioned in my introduction, there is an opportunity to leverage kind of the digital world and all the doors that have opened to really create a community of our own. So I think that idea of really holding on to each other and holding our hands through the process, whatever that might be, is really key, and technology allows us to do that. I'm finished, so Bree, you go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things I've realized is that when you're dealing with kids, the main focus has been on grades. And we don't talk about all of the parenting fun that goes along with it, because we've been so scholastically trained that the good grades and the honor roll and all of those things are so important. So the one thing I always tell parents are, if your child is struggling, value your whole child. Your child is more than just their grades. They're more than just their scholastic achievements. They are a person that has feelings, and not doing well at school is affecting them as well. Some of these kids are really used to being in groups. So right now, learning how to make their mom part of their group, or, hey, I'm sorry, I'm just, they're limited in who, and other, I think Dior said, building a community. So working to develop a whole situation where we can rely on each other more than just grades, more than just soccer team, and developing new habits and telling that child, yes, we love you. Reevaluating what we use in our homes to award and reward our children. It's been a lot this year.
Thank you, Bree. And just to make it as easy as possible, Dior just did something spectacular, which was this simple act of saying, I'm finished, when she finishes her thoughts. Sometimes it's obvious, but that helps other people know when the space is clear to jump in. And in moments where we have any issues with people both wanting to respond, if you guys don't already do it the way that Bree and Dior just did, I can direct. And please, everyone, make sure you have access to the chat so that we can address a few things there if need be. So one of the things that was just brought up is digital tools. I'm curious, what new tools, digital and otherwise, have you discovered that important? Clearly Zoom, clearly platforms like this on Hopin, clearly podcasting. I see Dr. Rachelle Whitaker smiling. I know, as a mother who had a child in March 2020, right in the beginning of the pandemic, Marco Polo, the video-based app, became a very important communication platform for me. And then some less high-tech tools, the simple family dinner, doing that once a week, was actually something we'd never done in our household, but it really helped to mark the weeks that seemed to go on in monotony and create a time for everyone to come together in our family. And so I'm curious to hear from all of you who serve so many women and families in general, what are some of the tools, digital and otherwise, that you found rise to the surface that really exemplify some of these concepts we're talking about? And Simine, I see that you have your hand up, so please take it away. And whoever'd like to go next.
Absolutely. Thank you. Surprisingly, I sort of gave up on all digital tools because I think Zoom, was, they were doing Zoom for about 3 months, and that was enough for us. So I returned back to the basics, family dinners, as you mentioned, Rachel. I just sort of limited their time on their iPads because I felt connecting this with Bree, again, to connect as a family in the old-fashioned way. I'm not big on social media, so for me, it was a completely different route. So we connected at home in our little space through all sorts of things, art, cooking together, family dinners, just going out for a walk, picking up flowers, making a wild bouquet, singing, dancing, painting, stuff like that, reading stories. Then obviously there's Netflix and YouTube. I didn't give those up, at least for my sanity. But yeah, I think I went more traditional, less on iPads, less on social media, and just connected with my girls. And we have so much in common. And it was just so delightful and fascinating to see how alike we were and how much fun we had together. So yeah, that was my bit on, how I coped. But it's been quite a struggle. But yeah, I took the old-fashioned way. Thank you. I'm done.
Anna, you're up. And Dr. Rachelle.
I already spoke about my podcast, and podcasting for me turned out to be very connecting. It really helped me to feel connected to women and people around the world. And this is my second virtual conference right now, and I highly recommend it. It changed my life to, after a year, be in a group of people and talk to you and to see your faces. And as much as I'd love to shake your hands and see you in person, this is the second best thing. There are many free conferences out there. And even if you just drop in and listen, I think it really, really helps our mental well-being right now. But about children, we're also very, very careful about how much time Kai spends in front of screens. But what we discovered is they're not all that bad. In the beginning of the lockdown, we found, for instance, a piano learning application. And he learned how to play piano by himself during a lockdown. Like after 3 months, he was playing with both hands, reading music. Media and digital media is not necessarily all that bad if you curate it and if you take time to use it to help you and help your child. I'm done talking. Thank you.
So we did a mixture of both. We use digital and we use non-traditional. We spend a lot of time outside. One of my sons loves outside and the other one doesn't. But we did bicycling, parks. We did social distance play dates. We did drive-bys. And that allowed them to stay connected to their friends and to our family. But I also provided times for them to connect with their with their friends via Zoom or Google Meet. Because for my older son, that was really important for him. That was a loss. He's 9. And so he was used to being around his friends. And so for him, that was a loss. And so one, like his two of his really good friends, we got with their moms. Well, they had already kind of started doing this on their own, but we just kind of made it official. And so we had scheduled dates where they could get on and talk to each other and play video games. So I think that like Anna said, there is value in the digital world because it helped them to stay connected when they couldn't be, together. But we did a combination of both. And that's what I suggested to my moms, because it's important to be, during this time, we had to be creative. I'm done.
Roxanne, would you like?
Yes. So like I said, I have a 19-year-old and he, did an interesting thing quite young. He actually got himself off social media, which was a bit different. I was like, hooray. But he was able to have that balance, right? It wasn't something that I had to manage. But with what I find with mothers, what I've been doing is I've been teaching them a lot about the central nervous system. And what the fact is that we're all overstimulated, right? We've all got, I don't know about you, but I know with my coaching and my speaking and my podcasting, I'm on Zoom more than I want to be. And it's part of what I do. So unfortunately, I have to do that. So with the neuroscience piece and the grounding piece, it's something that I've taught a lot of the mothers that just to how to slow their mind, how to kick into the parasympathetic nervous system, how your body carries all the emotions, and those actual skills. With some of their children, they've been trying to teach them the things that I've been teaching them. So I find that that's been a valuable skill that I've been able to impart. When we understand the brain, we understand that the body carries all emotions and that we can override the somatic in our bodies and quieten the mind. That's something that I found that a lot of my clients have utilized and also started to teach smaller versions of that to their children, which has been helpful. I'm done.
Thank you, Roxanne. Which our next core question, what are some of the new skills that we are having to model for our families, teach our children, And I'm really, really curious to hear what you found to be sharpened. Some of the things that have come up when I've addressed this topic with others is a new level of consent culture and the importance of negotiating and navigating safety and boundaries around a pandemic. I'm curious how that has played out in your families. I love what has been voiced around really embracing navigating our own attention. And I'm curious how everyone here, in addition to consent culture and other skills that may have emerged, how are you navigating a meta-awareness of your own attention, figuring out how much time do you want to spend on screens, how much time do you want to spend on social media, really finding that sweet spot where you can balance, as has been discussed, the high tech and the low tech or traditional media forms. If anyone would love to weigh in, I'd love to hear your perspective.
I'll go.
Bree and Anna.
Yeah, I can go and I'll pass it on to Bree. I think one of the biggest learning has been around being patient and just showing grace to myself first and foremost. I think as I have a toddler and she's 2 years old, so she pushes, I think, every single limit that I think I have within myself. And it's a great learning lesson because you kind of learn that that's how the person grows. You learn that that's how they are able to learn about the world around them. And so in addition to being patient and really leveraging that I think the second piece is around also just listening to myself and listening to my mind, to my body in particular. There are times where I find that I'm extremely tense when I'm on computer, and I don't hesitate to close the computer, take a nap or lay down, get a book. I have tons of books that I've discovered. And so I find into this habit of not only being patient with my child, but also being patient with myself, which, as I alluded to me is equally important, because if one is not happening, the other is going to break. And I think I've understood that balance, that is kind of like a two-way or sometimes multiple way, because even with your partner, that might also be a balance you need to strike. But just learning to be patient with their learning process as well as my own, and knowing when to basically, hang the white flag and say, I'm gonna tap out for an hour, do what you need to be doing, watch TV, watch cartoon, or if I'm on a Zoom call, I take a break when the call is done, and just to be able to replenish myself and my energy to make sure that I am feeling my best and I'm dealing with other people in the best way that I know how to. Because without that, I feel like conflict can easily arise. And for me, throughout the pandemic, I think the key theme has been around just giving space to each other within the limited space that we actually have available. And I'll pass it on to Bree. Thank you.
Thank you, Dior. Good morning again. One thing I've realized is that I have to model the behaviors that I want my teenagers to embody. So if I want them to get off the computer, I have to get off the computer. If I want them to read books, I need to read books. And so we've been buying physical books because I'm a tablet Kindle person. But now it's like, okay, let me buy a physical magazine. Let me buy physical books. So the Amazon people hate us, but we're buying like 2 to 3 books a week for each of us to sit and read. Hey guys, pick a book. Another thing we're doing is we're trying to find one new thing that we're good at. Like, what is something else you've never tried? What's something you've never thought of doing? If you want to learn how to paint, let's take a virtual paint class. So we're getting really creative and learning new hobbies that keep us off the computer, that keep us sane. So right now, my oldest decided he wants to study audio engineering. He's editing my podcast for me. He's negotiating the licenses for my music and things of that nature for my YouTube channel. He didn't even know he liked to do that. He hates social media, but he likes producing content. My youngest son started a Twitch channel. So he's now hosting Twitch conferences, teaching other kids how to play Roblox and some other game I don't like. And so, but his habit is, hey, Mom, this is what I like to do, but I know you don't agree with it, but it's something that keeps me busy and it's keeping me social. But I'm really grateful that we have decided we're going to nurture each other's skills. I'm taking yoga again. So they've decided to stop laughing at me when I'm in the middle of the living room doing yoga. We're all in this limited space all together, but we're trying to make the most of it. So I'm very grateful for these new behaviors and these new habits that we're picking up as a family. I'm done.
Thank you, Bree. I love the yoga part. I'm so with you there. But I'm also with you to say this again. For me, one of the big lessons was to take my time. I burned out after a few weeks of lockdown and homeschooling. I seriously burned out. And then I've learned that I have to be very strict with my time. I started getting up at 6:30 to go for a walk or to meditate or to do yoga. And in the evening, instead of sitting with my husband in front of the TV, I would just go into my bedroom, close all the doors, and read a book in peace. It was a very big lesson on how we really have to take care of ourselves. And I think, as Dior said, to be gentle with ourselves and be our own mamas in a way when situation is this complicated. The other thing I want to mention, what was a big lesson for me, is you can involve your husband much more than we do during normal times. Crisis happened, and suddenly he's able to take him to school in the morning and prepare breakfast. It was a very big lesson for us as a couple that they can take over more than maybe they do during normal times. And that was a very valuable lesson for me as a wife, but also for us as a whole family. And I think for my son, who's now watching his dad being more involved. Another very important thing for me was to learn that we need to explain things to our children. Kai was 5, and it was interesting to learn that we were able to explain to him what a pandemic is, what a virus is, how do you get it, so that it demystifies it and takes the fear away on his level, on a very simple level. But also with that comes how plastic children are in our hands. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but how we can mold and influence how they feel. And Nick and I were very careful not to project stress and fear. We didn't want to create this doomsday feeling with the child. And we were very conscious about keeping him both informed but also calm about the whole situation. Thank you.
Samin, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, hi. So I wanted to just connect back to what Gio said, patience. Oh my goodness, I don't think I knew what patience was before the pandemic. I was really tested with the patience part. And I'm a single mom to 2 little girls, so I'm very hands-on. And I wanted to tie patience to empathy. And I think I learned about empathy a lot more, because to me, it was, yes, empathy for self, for grown-ups, for our entire community, for the world, but especially for the little ones, because honestly, in my heart, I felt that the true heroes, the silent heroes, were the children, because if you think about it, their schools were closed, they weren't meeting their friends, the playgrounds were closed. It was their entire childhood had been turned upside down. So, and they had such delightful resilience in how they dealt with it, with the Zoom meetings and all this absolute craziness. And then, so to me, it was, I had a lot of empathy and patience with my children, for sure. And as for self, I think wellness, both your mental and physical wellness, was paramount. I went running every day. I think that sort of saved my life. And also just, doing cleanses. And I did all these cleanses and smoothies and stuff. But mental wellness, I think, is of paramount importance, because something like this can make you or break you, and there were days where I was completely broken. But I think through the power of, prayer, gratitude, however, an individual, wants to label it, I think by far that was the most powerful tool. to deal with your mental and spiritual well-being, which is equally important. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty conventional stuff, but I think each of us have a way to deal with it because we're all here. So we sort of made it. So yeah, I'm done.
Thank you, Simine. Roxanne, this question, and then I'll pose a new one.
Sure. So one thing that I've been doing a lot is walking. And I find that if I can walk over 45 minutes, I don't know if this makes sense to anybody, then I can finally get into a space where I listen to my voice. So that's something that I've been doing. Like I normally work out, but I've been walking as much as possible. And so what I try to do is I try to reflect on what I want an answer to. And then there's this mystical voice, which I periodically experience with Kundalini, that comes to me and I say, give me guidance on XYZ. So one thing that in one of those walks I've been working with my parents, I started to talk to them about the traditional element of discussing the fear, but to do it in a way that's developmentally appropriate for the kids that they have, and to have them share. So if the parents can share some of the things that they're experiencing, and whether you have a 2-year-old, which they may not get it, but and the different spaces and what in those family meetings, and it's not that structured, but when they do get to that space, a lot of parents have been finding that very helpful because it speaks to their vulnerability, but it also allows the child the space to share their vulnerability, and feelings about if they're mad at mom or dad, or grandma and grandpa because they can't understand, and it creates that space. So my parents have been trying to do that as part of the routine of one of the things that they do weekly, and it's been very helpful. I'm done.
Roxanne, what a great reflection. We're all having to learn so many new skills. And some of what I've heard from all of you, to play it back to you, is this really important emphasis on self-awareness, quieting the mind, patience, modeling the skills that we hope our children to be able to live out ourselves, taking space and allowing space, even when we are in spaces that are limited, doing things like yoga, walking, finding ways to touch our inner voices and not just get consumed by the cacophony outside of all of us. So thank you all so much for offering this overview of the skills that have really emerged for you as guideposts during this time. What I now want to do is take a step up in terms of our level of awareness. So if we were looking at a 5,000 to 10,000 foot view, now we're going to look at a 20,000 foot view. So instead of looking at our individual families and a micro family, we're going to look at the society of families that we all exist within, because we're seeing some really interesting trends, as we all know, during this pandemic. At least in the US, we're seeing declining birth rates. So children who are born at this time will be in much smaller cohorts. We're seeing decline of women in the workplace. Many have said that we're going back to the levels of 1980. We're seeing injustice being revealed, not new, but being revealed at higher levels of visibility. And we're seeing some class issues that have always been the case in the US, but are really being highlighted by things like access to vaccines and police brutality. So I'd love to hear what for each the higher level systemic issues that concern you most about the pandemic, and what you see as our individual roles in navigating that. First, I'd love to just to get a sense of what are these higher level roles that we would like to address and place some emphasis towards, so that we can emerge from the pandemic in a conscientious way that integrates the challenges that we've addressed here. I'm seeing several people interested. We're going to go to Anna, then Rachelle, and then Dior. Take it away.
Thank you. I had a huge revelation during this thing. It's quite early on, which was how interconnected we are. That globalization, we've been talking about globalization is real. And the fact that a virus that appears in Wuhan, China, starts killing people here in Seattle only 2 weeks later really showed us that we are, again, more interconnected and than we thought we were before. And what I've been trying to teach Kai was that exactly this, that we are all responsible for each other because we are so interconnected, and that decisions we make as a family can directly influence another family. I told him, look, if you and I go and eat in a restaurant tomorrow and you go back to school, your friend's grandfather might get sick and pass away. Like, it was a very important lesson that we are responsible for each other, and that our decisions have a very, very direct effect on people, not only in our community, but again, in China. The way we live here, the way we treat nature, the way we treat each other, it really has a direct impact on people all across the world. And for me, this was really like, wow, it's happening. The planet is one living organism, and everything we do impacts people everywhere else. And I think for Kai, as a new generation, this is a very, very important lesson, that he's responsible for everybody on this planet. Thank you.
So one of the things that I'd like to bring awareness to is that more than 2.2 million women are out of the workforce due to the pandemic. But prior to the pandemic, women had made historical gains in the workforce. We were at the top of our game. In 2020, the pandemic hit and we lost a lot of that ground. But I think the good that can come out of that is that there needs to be more laws in place for women in terms of flexibility in the work field, because what this is showing us is that you can work from home. You don't have to be in an office building. And a lot of employers, I think, are starting to see that. And so allowing flexibility allows a mom to be able to do multiple things and to do it well. And I think if anything, this pandemic has shown us that we can do a multitude of things and we can do it well. We just need more flexibility, more laws in place. I think it's crazy that in this country, my train of thought, but after a mom has a baby, her postpartum stay is so short. And it's just like there's not enough law in place for women. But I think that after this pandemic, there's hope that we can put some laws in place, because we are needed, right? In 2019, we were at the top of our game. So I think this just shows us that our place is needed in the workforce. So I'm done.
And so I'll take it from there. I think one of the big things I'm interested, I want to talk about a little bit is this intersection between parenting and many different other topics. So for example, particularly when you talk about race, and I think we've heard a lot with all the things that have happened this summer, but I wish there was a bit more emphasis on some of the particular challenges that I think some communities are facing, and in particular when you think about Black women, for example, and we're talking about this idea around, for example, having access to certain things, which, I consider myself still to be in a privileged space, right? To be able to have access to parks, to be able to have access to a partner that some people don't have. And those are not things that are unique to Black women per se. That's not what I'm saying. But I think there are some consideration that need to be taken around how certain communities in particular are having to deal with many other things other than COVID-19. It's not just that, they are in their own little bubble. Is that there's an issue around food access, that there's an issue around having parks that you can go to, that there's an issue around having a community around you that feels safe, that you can trust. And there's also an issue around also being welcomed into other groups. And that affects the way that you parent and the way that you communicate with your child, and your ability to also put fear aside, because a lot of the things that we talk about is, we shouldn't put fears into our little ones. But sometimes when you're so full of fear for the future, for your community, for other things, that's very difficult to put aside and not transmit, I would say, to your children or your child. So I think and I'm hoping it's going to get there, that as we start talking about parenting, we start talking about all the other different areas around food access, around access to work, around access to childcare, that particularly affects some of the most vulnerable population. And I think as we start to solve those issues, we're going to get into hopefully a generation where moms, parents of all backgrounds feel like they can actually handle what is thrown at them, and they have the needs, whether it's mental needs or physical needs or financial needs, to be able to actually take care of their families. I'm done.
Thank you, Dior. Roxanne and Samin, you'll be up next, but I want to link in a couple of these concepts. The importance of this interconnection and this systems awareness, which seems, from my observation, to be a critical skill for adults today and for our growing children as we navigate our increasingly complex society. And in that, I want to quote the incredible thinker Gwendolyn Elizabeth Brooks, who I'm sure we all are familiar with, who said, "We are each other's harvest, we are each other's business, we are each other's magnitude and bond." And these issues specifically around systemic oppression and the many levels of injustice that are piled upon certain communities, often in order to make others' communities' lives easier, is really a critical place for us to bring awareness. And I'm curious, what are the tools that we're using to address that conversation, Dior, that you so elegantly brought up right now around things like food access? And one resource that I've been really wonderfully educated by is Mickey Kendall's book, Hood Feminism, which I would suggest to anyone. But I'd love for us to really hone in on what are some of the tools that we could use to create that kind of change that Dr. Rachelle Whitaker discussed around policy change, advocating for women's rights. And so Roxanne, Samin, and then Bree, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, this is a loaded question. So recently I was asked to speak at Harvard on diversity and inclusion. And, I spoke from the lens of the trauma and the pandemic that we're in and diversity. And what I realized was, I was born in Trinidad, so I'm of, some Middle Eastern, mostly Indian background, but I'd really never sat and talked to my friends about the impact of being in Canada at age 16. So what it afforded, so I get on the line and I'm doing this leadership talk, and guess what everybody on the line internationally wanted to talk about was my impact of what I had experienced. And I realized that I was remiss in not addressing it from my space, because I was privileged financially. I'm, lighter skin, I'm non-white. So I say I almost fly under the radar. So at that particular day at Harvard, it really brought me to a level that I recognized I have to use my privilege as a woman that's non-white to help others to see the impacts, where I start to have conversations with my friends who are mostly white about what it was like to be non-white in a small community back in the early 80s. Something I'd never done before because I'd glossed over it. So I now feel I have a calling to be able to speak from that space, to speak as an executive who had been an executive in my early 30s. I had bumped up about things, but I would work past it and figure out a go around. So systemically, I feel the need to share my wisdom, to use my knowledge to help around parity, not just with, not being a non-white woman, but also as a female executive and the experiences that I had in my speaking as a keynoter, to be able to share the wisdom of what those elements are. What are the real invisible ceilings that exist for someone like myself? And what is it, in order to get to parity, what are the real things that we have to start talking about? And for me, what it started with was with my girlfriends, and everybody around me for the first time was uncomfortable, which was stark for me, because we are talking about very educated, affluent women that really didn't want to kind of understand, or not, I shouldn't say didn't want to understand, the questions that we had for the first time that they had of me made them uncomfortable. So I have a bigger platform for myself starting around my little 2-meter radius. I have to start here so I can make impact more globally.
Thank you, Roxanne. Who was up next? I believe it was Bree.
Oh, Bree or me?
Or was it Samin? Excuse me, Samin, go ahead. And then
Sure. No problem. I just wanted to connect parenting to politics. Given everything that's been happening recently, from Black Lives Matter to the Capitol riots to the elections, inauguration day, just everything. And, I watch the news. So, here I am, just a passive viewer, and sometimes my blood is boiling. And little did I notice that my 9-year-old daughter was viewing everything. So parenting and the politics came. And imagine me as an adult, the fury and the heartbreak I felt, what she was going through. So I had to explain to her, why there is so much hate out there in the world, why people behave like that, why there is such violence. And these are not pretty things, but, our children are exposed to it. And recently, schools in Florida, they have the drill for armed intruders in their schools. I never had that when I was growing up. So how do you explain that to a kindergartner, So, so it's you have to be very brave to be a mom, to be a dad, and explain all these things, in have a proper discourse with your children. So not to instill fear in them, but to instill hope and create a better generation of people, so that history doesn't repeat itself. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Samin. Roxanne, or Bree, please.
Hello. So as a Black upper middle class family, I'm a single mom, I'm divorced. I have 2 Black sons. We did not view the events in the similar fashion of many of the other people because we are in Washington, D.C. To hear from my home, you can hear the National Guard being deployed over my house. You can hear when the insurrection happened, you can hear the jets flying to stop the things happening. So we don't have the option of not having fear. I have 2 boys who every day they leave the house to do whatever they have to do. They are in fear of being stopped by the police. They are in fear of not coming home. We have been teaching protocol and etiquette for the last 2.5 years of how as a Black teen man do you not cause a problem or a stir in the community as you go about your day-to-day activities. So with us being home in the pandemic, we're grateful that the world got to see on a large scale what we have been experienced as Black people in America for my entire life. So now it's been pulled to a higher level. So what we have done is decided that we would jump on our Facebook and our platform to inform others of what's going on. I will educate you, but I can't fix it for you. So I will give you the tools and the resources for you and your friends and my friends of all races to learn about what's going on. But these are things I've been telling you about and posting about and sharing for 20 years. So for us, we're tired. So, my sons have realized that it is not their job to carry the weight of educating people who have chosen not to be educated. That is just their choice. As Black boys, they just need to be able to obtain employment, gainful, meaningful employment, and not be afraid of the police or be afraid of to watch the Capitol Hill people. And when the Black Lives Matter protests occurred, people were actually chased by National Guard and take shelter in people's homes so they wouldn't be injured. And then for the Capitol insurrection to happen less than 6 months later, and those people were being escorted and let in by the police that were supposed to protect them. So that is a conversation that I have had to have with my children about the disparity and the over-policing and lack of policing. And so for us, the pandemic has caused us to have more conversations that are uncomfortable because their safety is paramount to me. Additionally, as far as our communities are served, we have had so much job loss in the DC area because everything is closed. So we have worked with our church to help distribute food to the senior citizens, to the young people. There are families here who went from making $70,000 to now they're making nothing. People can't pay their rent. People aren't able to pay their car notes. So we're watching our friends and family go from very comfortable lives to almost nothing. So our view here has been very painful of watching, hey, my sons are like, hey, Mom, I have an extra pair of something that I can donate to someone. They've never thought about donating things before. So now it's like, oh, Mom, you know what? You made a lot of chili. Does Miss Rose downstairs need some chili? You know what? Let's knock on the door and ask. Let's not waste food. So they've learned that we're very blessed, and we've maintained our blessings during this pandemic. But, you know, the conversations are hard and they're ugly. But I'm so grateful that the world has had to see it on a global scale versus just me and my sons protesting with flags every year. But thank you. I'm done.
Thank you for such an eloquent wrap on that. It is so real and so true that this period has created broader awareness of challenges that have always been in place. But I think one of the quotes I really enjoy personally is when you've been in the privileged position, equality feels like. And for many, even just staying home and sitting on your couch feels like such a huge infringement upon basic rights that it's fascinating to now watch how so many are contending with having their basic rights upon, and not only in this past year, but for so many generations. And I want to use these last 10 minutes, where it's 7 minutes officially, but we'll take 10 if you guys are okay with it. I want us to envision the future that we want for our children. I want to give each of you permission to wave a magic wand and create a post-pandemic, whatever that means, 85% herd immunity reality that embraces some of these changes that I've heard you also eloquently speaking to, whether it's policy change, postpartum and childcare adjustments, legal system, whether it has to do with the police state, whatever it is that you would love to personally wave your magic wand around at the highest level. I'm talking 20 to 50,000 foot here. What might we imagine as change makers, innovators, and pivot points in communities, people who can activate other hearts and minds? What might we imagine to see changed from what has been revealed during 2020 and beyond? And I'll leave it there. Dior, would you love to?
I will try, but I was going to say, I think an ideal world, and I've thought about this for the last few months for me, is really for other girls that not only that look like me, obviously that's important, but to feel, for them to be in a world where they feel like they are safe, a world where they feel like they can truly do anything that they want. And we say that, and I hear that all the time, and it always sounds like a movie or something that's eventually attainable to, like, you know, the 1%. But I want it to mean something in this world to my daughter in particular, and other ones, not just her. I don't want it to be something that's only accessible to my daughter because I have the means to support her to go through that. I want this to be a dream that's attainable and feels real to all the other girls behind me. And I think particularly one of the conversations for me that's been really real is around how many people, how many women are in CEO positions or in the executive suites. And to me, that still feels like a conversation that eventually will happen. Or yes, we're seeing, 20% or 30%. But we still haven't reached a point where there's a conversation around, there's not a question being asked about whether or not it's possible. And that's the place that I eventually want to see for everyone else, where we're not questioning back and forth what's possible or how do you look or whether you can make it. But it's so clear in the way that you move through the world that eventually you'll be able to get exactly where you need to in a safe way while still feeling really confident. And I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dior. I've heard that articulated as how wonderful. It's exhausting to be in a world that's not designed for you. Wouldn't it be beautiful if we could redesign a few aspects of this world? Samin, would you like to weigh in on this?
So if I wave my magic wand, I think I would wish for love and acceptance of everyone, from big to small, and just to love each other and accept each other and to stop with the hate and the violence and the bullying or whatever is going on. And I think we need to just open up more and just have conversations like this where we understand where we're coming from. And our true goal is actually our children, for the next generation at least. We should put aside whatever, just accept and hug and just love and just create a lovely environment where there's no hate and there's no bad feelings and no darkness. I think that would be my magical wish. Thank you.
I think for myself, we have to leverage the power around us as women of privilege and capacity to get these things achieved of heightened awareness. We can't do it alone. We have, we have to look around and see who are our male counterparts or partners or, different organizations that can assist us, because we're not going to de-stratify this alone. And to have powerful women like I feel privileged to sit here and discuss these things. But, my situation is I have a white son. He does not look brown like me. And I've had to have conversations with him about the privilege that he has, perceived privilege, and what he needs to do with it because he's bicultural. So I think having those open, uncomfortable, heart-aching conversations and leveraging our power to make the shift, and to Dior's point, to have the hate gone, and for us to help the less privileged, because we are truly privileged to be where we are, and we all have voices, so we should use our voices to the maximum of our capacity. I'm done.
So one of the things that I would like to see happen is that, I said it before, but that we really put more emphasis on who we bring into office. I live in Texas, and so as many of you know, the winter storm was here and we lost power and water and all kinds of things. And I really hope that from all of this that has happened during this year, that we really understand the importance of our local elected officials, because I think a lot of times that gets lost in the wash, but it's so important. And I hope that we really activate policy and laws and really accountability for the people that are in these positions that make some of these decisions. So as a mom, I'm hoping that, that as a mom, that I can share this with other moms and that we actually do something about it. We don't just let 2020 and 2021 come and go and we kind of get back, but really moving forward in that action and seeing things actively being done for a change. I'm done.
I want to take the helicopter view again and kind of circle back to what I was talking about, the big lesson I learned from the pandemic, how interconnected we are. And I want to wish away the conflict in the Middle East. I want to wish away all the wars that are going on. We are not even talking about this, what's going on in other parts of the world. I want to wish away the way women are treated across the globe, in India, in Africa. I want to, and then I want to wish away the differences we're seeing here. I want to wish away all this conflict, and I want to wish here, please, a world where we work together, because we have everything we need for everybody to be well off and safe and accepted and respected, and for everybody to blossom. We just have to embrace it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to and I'm just going to wrap up with saying that if I had the magic wand and could fix some things, I really am grateful that families have had a chance. I know in all of the bad things that have occurred in the last year, families have really had a chance to hopefully reconnect. And I'm hoping that the ease of, it's not necessarily just ease, but the time that was provided to everyone, that they were able to connect with their loved ones and really get to know each other and benefit from this time. Also, I want for the children to come away from this as warriors. They can survive anything. So I really am just hopeful that all of the kids around the world who were forced to be home for a whole year with their crazy parents and loved ones benefit from this situation and learn and become stronger and emerge victorious from this, because this should not break us. Not everyone has a loving home environment. Not everyone has a fantastic place to be with their family. So I'm just prayerful that people come away from this unscathed.
For sharing your thoughts. You are such a spectacular group of women. I'm honored to have been able to moderate for you to the best of my ability. I'm going to wrap us up with a quick overview of some of the core concepts that emerged. So first of all, we are a beautifully diverse panel, largely hailing from the United States and locales environs. We have 6-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 9-year-olds, teenage boys, young girls. We are from Seattle, Niagara Falls, Houston, Toronto, Washington, D.C., all over this map. We are coming together around these core issues of supporting parents, modeling the new skills that we have had to master in order to maintain our own center and build out comfort and care in our families and our communities. We've talked about the importance of harnessing that parasympathetic nervous system, the self-awareness and the patience that it takes to give people space, to give ourselves space, the ability to gracefully dance between traditional pastimes and tools and digital tools in ways that feed ourselves and our families, and stepping out to use our voice and our privilege to make this world a safer place, to make this world a place where our children can truly show up however they feel best suited to, without fear for their life based on ridiculous assessments that actually have nothing to do with inherent worth. We want to come together to build a world where our political leaders, where our policy, and where our compassion for discomfort as well as empathy allow us insight into each other's experiences and allow us to build the kind of communities that we envision. And when I sit and listen to a group of women like this, I personally am so inspired that that change is possible. So I hope all of you remember that light that you have inside and keep doing the good work that you're doing and leading this charge for change, because I see the future that all of you are weaving with your magic wands. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to see you all in the other sessions. Please feel free to reach out via email if you have any other questions or thoughts.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.